Hey everyone, Jamie here. A quick disclaimer before we begin the episode. There's a few moments of explicit language, so viewer discretion is advised. Enjoy the episode.
Welcome to Goalie Science, the podcast where we try to bridge the gap between the scientific theory of hockey goaltending, hockey, and, anything else we come to think of. This week's episode is brought to you by Jamie Phillips' Instagram account. If you don't follow Jamie Phillips on Instagram, you should be. He's in the pursuit of 25,000 followers. And as always, I'm here with him today. Jamie, how are we doing?
Hey, thanks for that plug. Now you say that, that's a lot of people. Yeah, that's pretty cool. But if you like goalie content, follow my podcast. But today, we are joined by our third guest on the pod, so pretty excited to have this. Someone that I know personally, someone we skated together. She is an incredible goalie, and I'm not going to hype her up too much because her ego is going to get too big. But Elaine, Chuli, thanks for joining us to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Ben. Thanks for having me. I've been listening to this for I would say just over a month. Pretty good content here, so I'm happy to join out here.
We appreciate it. So Elaine, for those listening that might not know you, do you want to just give us a brief introduction about yourself, where you currently play, and a little bit about your career growing up?
Yeah, for sure. So I grew up in Waterford, Ontario, which Jamie knows is a small little town, probably smaller than Caledonia. But Waterford, I played in Waterford, then I moved over to Brantford. Actually played against Ben when I played in Brantford. And then moved over to girls for Stony Creek all through high school, and then went to the University of Connecticut for 4 years. And then now I'm going into, I think it's my 7th year of pro with the Toronto Six in the Premier Hockey Federation. So yeah, that's just a quick little update there. But yeah, looking at third season. No, fourth. No, now I can't even think. I think third season, fourth in Toronto. No, I can't remember. I don't know.
Fifth, if you include the Fury. Fifth, if you include the Furies. If we throw a little throwback back into it, but
yeah, well, yeah, true. But COVID messed everything up, like it did with all men's hockey too. So.
And you should, you had 7. You were 7 because I think we went pro at the same time, and then you have just outlasted me.
Which is shocking. I thought it was done like numerous times, but we're still going strong. And so just going to keep riding it out for now.
And you say going strong. Congratulations on winning the PHF championship.
Thank you. Yes, that was a big one.
That's what I was going to say. How did we bury the lead there? Like everyone, both of you, Jamie, shame on you. Elaine, stop being so humble. We're joined by a PHF champion coming off with huge things. Yeah. Jamie, how many championships do you have?
Professional hockey? Zero playoff games. Actually, no, I have one American League playoff game. Does that count?
No.
Okay. All right, but we'll get away from my embarrassing career and into it. So you had mentioned that you had made the jump into girls hockey. And so Ben and I are not as familiar as girls hockey. I coach a few, but in terms, that's still a new kind of area for me. So when making that decision, what does that kind of look like for you, deciding between, okay, do I continue to play men's hockey or boys hockey? Do I make the jump to girls hockey? What's that like, and what do you kind of like weigh as deciding factors?
Yeah, I think as a goalie, you can probably stay in the boys game a bit longer. I mean, but yeah, that's just a general statement, but I think that's pretty true. Especially if you're already in it, like going from a girls game now to a boys at a similar level would be like, it's a lot different. The shot, well, yeah, just the speed of the shot's different. But if you're growing up in the boys game and you're kind of just developing with it, then I think it's quite doable as a goalie. For years, I thought maybe I switched over too soon, and I kind of like regretted leaving. So I never got cut from AAA. I just kind of decided like you kind of feel pressure that like, okay, to play on like Team Ontario or Team Canada or something, that you need to be in the women's game. And I don't even know why that's kind of a thing, but it kind of is. But I think you see goalies now staying in the men's game longer, and eventually they do switch over. But yeah, I don't know. I just kind of felt like it was time, I guess. I had just finished grade 7, and then I switched to Stony Creek. Probably wish I would have stayed in the men's game a bit longer, like I said, but it's, everything's worked out now. So it's easy to look back and say like shoulda, coulda, woulda, but yeah.
Yeah, I think that's something that I hear when we work with our girl goalies as well, is that exact same commentary, because the men's national and provincial systems are a little different. Obviously, there's a heavy, for the junior team, there's a heavy CHL presence represented, but that process obviously looks a lot different in girls hockey. But it's also, and you can kind of touch on this too as well as Elaine, but from what I understand is if you're not in that system as it begins, so as provincialization starts or localization at the provincial national level, if you're not in that system right away in girls hockey, it's really hard to break in. Like, it's a really closed system.
It is. I would say it is very closed, and like, yeah, I would say a bit of politics come in on sometimes making some of those rosters and those teams. Like, just to be honest, it's just the way it is. I think it's like that in a lot of sports, but yeah, like, then again though, if you are a girl and you're playing like minor midget AAA and you're like standing out, then you're gonna probably get a chance at some point. But yeah, and you're gonna get a NCAA or whatever you want to do there. But yeah, typically, definitely, if you're in, earlier on, it's once you get in, and then if you do well at the camps and stuff, you're kind of can stay around.
Yeah, it's just, again, it's obviously it's a different process. And I think, at least in Ontario, right, that's where we're kind of coming from this with your experience, and then where I coach currently. So Jamie, if you know Michigan girls hockey, you can please give us some more details. But a lot of, again, it's just the systems have evolved a lot. And so Elaine, you mentioned that you played Stony Creek junior hockey, so women's junior hockey. Is it still the PWHL? But were you, just timing wise, were you one of the first few years in that league? Was it PW when you played? Like, how that started?
Yeah, it was, but I think they changed the name of it, because I think now the PWHPA, the other professional, like, it's like a professional association of some of the other players that play in, their, I think, name is going to be the PWHL. So I think that the old PW has changed its name. I'd have to look it up, because I actually, some of the girls were talking about it this year, and I don't even remember what it's called now, but I think it does have a different name. But it was the Provincial Women's Hockey League when I played in it.
Jamie, are you fact checking this?
Yeah,
I should know this. I coach like a half dozen girls that are in this league right now.
I was looking and I was getting lost. The only girl goalie that I currently work with is going off to play AAA, so I don't have to worry about this too much. But so, Ben and I are both familiar with Junior A or Tier 2, whatever they call it now, hockey in Ontario. And there's many leagues. Each province has their own teams. What is the junior system? What's the structure of junior hockey like in women's hockey in Ontario and then in Canada?
Yeah, so in Ontario, like, typically, obviously, there is high school hockey, but I never really found, like, that's not really your top program. Like, my high school hockey, I probably played forward on the well, I could have, yes, played forward. Like, they have people I have never skated. So I never played like high school hockey, but we all played, like, all the top talent, I would say, was in the PWHL at the time, which I don't know the name of now. And then, there were some girls probably in like prep schools, but usually even they would play in the PWHL still. But in other places in Ontario, you definitely see, or in Canada, you definitely see more, I would say, more prep schools as well, like, that would play against like the Shaddocks and Naha and those. But there's like Notre Dame, and I don't even know all the names of them, but I would say if you go west, there's definitely more, like, it's more of like a school, like a private school. And then in the States, like, their high school sports are just much bigger than they are here in Ontario. So
yeah, just a big difference. I know that now so it's been, we're old, but it's been like 10 years since, or over 10 years since you played back in Stony Creek.
We are kind of old.
Yeah, it comes at you fast. Jamie's oldest here, so it's fine. But the thing that always amazed me, and this is, again, the past few years, my introduction to understanding the junior women's game, because it's again just so different from the men's junior game, is how, at least even now, it still feels closer to minor hockey, even though the caliber is really high. So it's like this weird mix of, okay, like, this is junior hockey, by the way, they're calling it the OWHL now, accordingly. So that switched. It was for sure the PW though. It's
It wasn't. I knew what you meant when you called it the PW. So.
There we go. But it's still, at least again with the people that we work with and watching that league, is it still feels like a little bit of, it's not quite turned into the same way that we look at junior hockey and the men's side of things. There's a bit of a weird kind of mix between that. And again, I'm seeing that now, so I'm assuming that was probably kind of similar when you played. Like, did it still feel like it had an air of minor hockey to it, even though like women's U18 AAA is coexisting? It's like the same age of the girls in the league. They're just
100% it is a continuation. And then they switched all the names to like U15, U8. I don't even know all of them now, but we just called it like midget, junior, right? Like that. So and junior just felt like a continuation of midget, which felt like a continuation of phantom. So like, it does feel like minor hockey, whereas the men's game, like a lot of those junior organizations, like especially like the OHL, it's like separate from like necessarily, you don't just work your way up and then you're like on the OHL team, right? Where in girls hockey, you're you kind of just, you can pick where you play junior too. So it's kind of based off like what's closest. But then, I mean, girls do move around a bit too. But it's not like there's a draft, I guess, too, right? Like,
was considering going to like a prep school. Usually in Ontario, most people look at like the New England area. Was that an option for you? Because obviously you chose to go to Stony Creek, and I've heard in the more recent years that going and playing in what was the PWHL is now the, what is it again, Ben?
Apparently it's the OWHL. I just feel really dumb. It was definitely the PWHL this past year. Like, as of this past year, it was still the PWHL. But I think that makes sense what Elaine's saying. I've
heard from a few girls that played at the Division 1 school across from us, Finlandia. They said that that's kind of like the USHL of women's junior. Like, if you play in that league and you do well, you're going to get a scholarship, almost guaranteed. So for you, making that decision of whether to go to prep school or go to junior, like, was that ever an option, or was it always just like, hey, let's go to Stony Creek, it's close to home, this is what I'm doing?
Yeah, I was pretty set on the junior road just because, like you said, it is like I still was living at home, and it's like those prep schools aren't cheap. There was a couple like that in Toronto that there was an option, but I honestly I didn't look at any in the States. I just kind of like, I don't know if it might be my accounting background, but I'm like, no, it doesn't make sense to spend money yet to go to high school when I can, go play in Stony Creek and go to high school for free. So, but obviously a lot of people have gone to those prep schools and paid or get scholarships or whatever, and it worked out as well. But that was kind of my thinking for it.
Ben is one of those people.
Come on, man. I sure was. How hard
No, that's fair. Which one did you go to?
I went to a school called Northfield Mount Herman in Massachusetts. And
cool.
I had a great time. I think this is where there is the difference, but I see it with like the guys who are going into U18 or trying to leave U18. And I think it's still the same thing in women's hockey. Obviously, there's, as you try to keep going to higher and higher levels, there's only a certain number of spots available, right? Like, I know, again, even speaking with some of the girls that we work with who are excellent goalies, some of which have already have their Division 1 scholarships locked up. But we have goalies that we work with, or we know, that have Division 1 scholarships who have a hard time even finding a junior team to play for, which feels ridiculous. Like, that's how ultra competitive. And again, this has been like this rapid increase in women's hockey, which I think is like so much fun. I am such a big fan of it, but it's led to this issue where like the development and building out these leagues and building out this infrastructure just isn't there yet. And I thought it would be pushed by COVID, right? Where so many Division 1 goalies got an extra year, decided to stay. And now we just have this backlog that's happened in women's hockey, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That definitely caused a ton of chaos, because like goalies that should have been gone, and then like they're bringing in this person and this person. Well, wait, now our starter's staying another year. And it definitely, and I never thought about how, like, because I feel like when I was like the PWHL, this was like more than 10 years ago, like 12 over 12 years ago, and it was God. The infrastructure seemed okay, but now, like, that's a good point. Like, as the women's game continues to grow, like, definitely I could see how like there's good talent without like a legit place to play.
Yeah, and I know. So my fiance is she played university hockey. We actually met at university. Very cute story, everybody. You should follow us up.
Wow.
Well, we should have done that in the hockey romance book, man.
Yeah, we should have well, don't give anyone any ideas. But I know, so she grew up in Alberta, and again, like you mentioned before, like at least when she played, so she's same age as us. That was like the start of those prep schools, like Edge. Notre Dame would always been good, right? Yeah, that's the classic one. But those, and again, back when you would have been playing, and back when she played, that was before those schools like kind of fully separated. And so Edmonton AAA was playing against Edge in the same league or the same national championships, which is interesting, a little bit different. But ultimately, the point I'm kind of get to is I think it's so strange how there hasn't been a bigger push for a nationalized system. So Ontario, the PW or the OW, whatever we're going to call it now, exists, and this is again this great platform to get to the next level, whether that's youth sport, whether that's Division 1, Division 3. Then you go west and there's no junior, so there isn't an RBC Cup. There isn't like the same nationalization, even though I think the demand is there. Like I think like you look at again the talent that's coming through and all this stuff. It's like it's undeniable the system needs to grow, right?
And like even like girls that were like out east, like in those provinces, a lot of them would like move and play in the PWHL. Like that was, like you said, that was the top thing. And there's no real, like I would say, like that's a good point. Junior wise, I don't think there's anything west of that level. So I feel like if you're out there, there's girls that move in from the west, or they play in like their Edge, or there's one in BC. I can't remember what it's called, but yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. This is one of my weird soapboxes. Jamie hasn't heard me go off on this yet.
This is a very new one. I like
this. I mean, again, and I'm super biased. Like I think the junior aged women goalies that I get to work with, I think they're fantastic. Like I think they're so talented and they work so hard, and I watch them play and I'm like, this is ridiculous that you have to fight for a spot. Like, obviously, again, don't get me wrong. That's not to say that anyone else that's obviously playing in that league aren't extremely talented as well and don't work as hard, et cetera, et cetera. But it just feels like to have 12, 13, 14 junior teams, whatever that number fully looks like in Canada, and again, the part that is weird to me too is, right, it's considered U22. And so rarely there's situations where, let's say someone goes to, you go to the University of Wisconsin and you're there, and for whatever reason, the environment doesn't fit, you don't match with the coaching staff, and you want to take a step back. In the men's game, you just hop back into junior, right? You're still of eligible age. You'll go play in the USHL. You'll go play in BC, whatever that looks like. That's really hard for women to do, to try and pop. There aren't spots. We've talked about that.
And especially as a goalie too, and I think you see this issue. This is an issue all the way up the women's game, because right now in North America, there's 7 pro teams. That's it. So it's an issue that is kind of you have this tight feeder that goes to NCAA or youth sports, and then there's a lot of NCAA teams, a lot of youth sport teams. But then post that, it narrows right back down again to nothing for girls that want to keep playing post college. Which is it's definitely weird. There's not a lot of spots. And going back to what we were talking about earlier, how you said if you say I'm a girl playing I don't know, A level or something, and then I want to make a jump to a junior team. But if the junior team already has their feeder up from the midget team and then has their set junior goalies, good luck, right? Where it's if you're already in that organization and you start in Bantam and go to midget and then junior, I feel like you have a better chance. They're going to take the athletes that have already been in their program instead of bringing in someone outside. Unless you're playing like I said, minor midget AAA, you could probably get a spot. But if it's anything else other than that, minor midget AAA boys, but if it's anything other than that, it is tough to get a spot.
Yeah, and Jamie and I have made a big focus on this podcast to talk about our views on development, right? Because ultimately, everyone most people get into hockey because it's fun and they want to learn to play and they want the opportunity. And so we're big advocates for healthy competition and healthy development opportunities. The thing that again throws me for a loop is you get into grade 10 in women's hockey. At least again, this is Ontario, so but this is how U18 hockey works across the country. In women's, U18 is 3 years, right? So now you have grade 10s competing against grade 12s. There is no U16, Jamie. So there's no minor midget in girls hockey.
Oh, I didn't know that.
No, pooled, grade 10 through grade 12.
Is that because, or like 10, 12 years ago, just the number of girls playing hockey was lower than it is now?
Great question. Elaine, any idea?
I don't like, again, this U18 and U22 thing really still throws me for a loop. So U18, that's midget.
That's midget. That's midget, but junior is the same thing, right? Like it's with the exception of you can play the post grad year, which is now more people are happening. But that again has only really started with COVID or related to COVID stuff.
Basically, the way that when it was, obviously, so like midget and junior. So like junior was like, it's basically all the same age people. Midget and junior is all the same age, minus like a few exceptions of an overage person. But it's just like tier 1 is the junior, tier 2 is midget. Like for me, I played, like you could play junior in grade 9 if you wanted, which is, if you're good enough, you can play on that at that junior level. I actually played, I played midget in grade 9 and 10, which I think that's going to be still bantam in grade 9.
Yes.
So I played midget in grade 9 and 10. Grade 10, I could have played junior, but the junior team had their starting goalie. So I was like, for my development, I ended up staying a year back in midget again in grade 10. And then I jumped up to junior in grade 11 and 12. But it's really not, it's more of just like a tier 1, tier 2 thing of like, when there's a spot ready for junior, you go. That might be could be grade 9, 10, 11, or 12. It's kind of weird, really.
Yeah. And if anyone's listening to this and not watching, Jamie's face has been broken for about 6 minutes straight here. The guy is never. Yeah, and this is why I wanted to bring this up today, because I too have been confused now for many years, trying to understand and now being more a part of that and trying to support some of our goalies through that system. It's complicated. It is highly political. It is like, and this is again a story, and Elaine, this is what has happened this year. But we had again a few goalies in this league this past year, and a month and a half into their season, like beginning of November, they were already trying to finalize the team they were playing on next season. They had played like 6 regular season games, and they were like, I haven't signed for next year yet. And I'm like, that's what's happening. That's what's happening.
And I haven't even thought about this in honestly over 10 years, because now I'm like, my head's like, shit, there's only 7 pro teams. That's 14 goalies. Like that's not a lot of spots coming out the other side. But I've never actually like jumped back in and like looked at the others, like, before college, just because I feel so far removed from it. But yeah, no, that's crazy.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess we'll shift gears here, because I do want to I want to poke into your experience going through college, going to pro, and we don't want this to take 2 hours of everyone's time. But yeah, the fact that, the way most sports work is a funnel, right? Like as you get older, the funnel gets smaller. As you get higher, eventually people filter out. But women's hockey is currently in a very confusing thing right now. And again, there's obviously been a ton of issues with league-wise and fighting for proper monetary support. And I'm sure we could dive into that forever. But for the sake of time, I want to touch a little bit about your experience at college, because I think that's, for a lot of women, and this is, again, this is changing, thankfully, but for a long time, I'm sure that was also how it was presented to you. The goal was to go play at college. Like that was the goal of, as growing up in the girls' game, that's the goal, go play in college, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because that's 11 years ago now as a freshman, which is crazy. But yeah, that was the goal. You're like, there was really no like monetary options in terms of like playing pro after that, like where you could actually like make a living and not have to work. So like, yeah, college was like, going D1, that was like the goal, and additionally like being on a national team, which is very like, it's weird. Like if you think about it, if in men's hockey, it was the Olympics, like, but that's not even how it is at all, right? Like there's NHL, AHL, like, and then all these pro leagues in North America and then overseas. But it's like in the women's game, it's like NCAA and then Olympic team. Like there's only, and it's like such a small There's like, it's like almost impossible to do. So, yeah.
Now, what was the recruiting process like for you? Because I always like asking this question because for everyone it's always different. And I've spoken to a few girls that have come out of the junior system. Most of them have gone D3, but for you, like what was that like for talking to University of Connecticut, other teams you talked to? Like how did you kind of guide your way through that?
Yeah, for sure. So it comes back like playing in Stony Creek, there was a lot of connections there with coaches and they ran a lot of tournaments. So, 5, 6 times a year you're playing in these tournaments where there was huge university presence at all those events. So, and then I just kind of started narrowing it down and saying like, okay, some reason I knew I wanted to be an accountant then, which I don't know. I don't even know why I wanted to do that, but anyways, I did. So I was like, okay, I need a business school. And like a lot of the Ivies don't have like an accounting program, which meant, okay, I need to do extra courses when I'm done, which didn't really interest me. So that kind of narrowed my search. And then again, same thing as the prep school. I didn't want my parents to pay for me to go to school, and the Ivy League don't. Well, they do financial aid, but it's all based on like, well, you guys know it's all based on like what your family income is and stuff. So I didn't want to have to pay to go to school. So, and then also being a goalie, you have to look at like, okay, who's there already playing, like how many years they have left, like, because some of those situations you can just look at the roster and be like, okay, I can still play really well, but I might not ever start over whoever is there for whatever reason. Not to be like negative or anything, but that's just the way it is sometimes. Like even if you work really hard and prove yourself, it still might not land in your favor. So kind of just looking at like what I wanted to do and then where am I going to play. Those were like the two big things for me. And I got a lot of heat for going to UConn because everyone said it was a crappy school, but I played a shit ton of games and had a lot of fun. So it worked out.
People said that because like your stats were very good for your whole.
They were, but yes, they were, but we really struggled. Like I think my freshman year we won 1 game, and I had a lot of people like, why'd you pick that school? Like why didn't you go to like Duluth or whatever? There was a few, Cornell or like Harvard, these schools that were like a lot better teams. But I was like, well, I can, I was able to start all 4 seasons and played a lot of games. So I was like, it was good for my development. But yeah, people wondered why I did that, but I don't know. It worked out.
That's a very important thing that you just said. And that a lot of people kind of will get blinded, especially like, for like in men's hockey, the BUs and the big schools will come and they'll recruit. And a lot of people see that and they see stars in their eyes, but they don't understand that they're going to be a little fish in a very big pond. Where sometimes if you go to a smaller school, quote unquote, the opportunities are better to get playing time. And like you said, it's better for your development. If you played the fewest games you played was 24 in a season out of probably around 30-ish games. Like if you had played 5 games each year, we're probably not talking to you on this pod. And if we do, it's about doing our taxes. So, and that's really, really important. That's really important. Like the development and looking at those opportunities is something I think that more people need to consider when going to schools. And I'm going to keep the party rolling. Unless Ben is in their college question, because I want to get into your experiences in China, because I remember after your senior year, that's when we started to skate together with Bouge. And I remember that you were going back and forth. You had all these options. I remember you kept calling me like, I don't know what to do. And you ended up going to play for it's the Vanke Rays
I think it's Vanku. I don't know.
Vanke,
Yeah, something like that.
In Shenzhen, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was part of the Canadian Women's Hockey League, and the team is in China. So how did that opportunity come up, and what is it like playing hockey in a Canadian league in a team based in China?
Yes. So yeah, this is where we. I've known you a little. Like I've known of you before this, and like back to the math days when we were working out with Hockey Canada, you would always be at McMaster there working out. I remember.
I was not with Hockey Canada. Just preference. Hockey Canada had not anything to do with me.
That was Hockey Hamilton, Ontario, is what Jamie was associated with.
Yeah. So I was playing. I ended up my college career. It actually hurt. Yeah, my knee was pretty messed up. So after my senior year, I had ACL reconstruction, meniscus repair, kind of a big knee fix. So I took that whole next season off, and I had entered the CWHL draft thinking, okay, I'm working at an accounting firm in Brantford. Okay, I'll play for the Toronto Fury. Well, then all of a sudden I'm at my desk, and I get this text from a girl that I'd played like U18 group. She's like, hey, like I got this really cool opportunity. Like, take a look. Like, here's some of the photos, and like it was this like message, and I was like, okay. And then literally 15 minutes later, the head coach was calling me and asked me to go to China to play, and it was $60,000, I think, US, and all expenses paid for, no food, no board, nothing. It was just like, come to China, we're growing the game here, and we want you to, we want you to start a goalie. And I was like, okay. So I literally signed the contract that night and quit my job. And I was like, all right, I'm moving to China. So I was like, I was like, it sounded cool. And it was supposed to be like a whole, like 4 or 5 year process to get us through to the 2022 Olympics, to help with the Chinese players development. It ended up being a lot shorter than that. There was 2 teams in China. Then it went down to 1, and then the game probably folded. So anyway, I ended up in China for a year. But yeah, Jamie, that was right around when I remember we were in Montreal, and you just got called up to the Jets.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, that I was going to mention that because we were going to get into the travel part, but I remember that we were playing in Laval, and that's when I got called up to the Jets. And I remember it was a 10-minute Uber that cost me $100 each way to go and get Starbucks with you. Because I remember I was like, hey, I just paid $200 this Uber, coffee's on you, and I made you buy me my coffees. But I remember that.
No, it was $200. Holy crap!
Yeah, it was the most ridiculous thing. But I was like, well, in my brain, I was like, well, I just got called to the NHL. It's okay. And I haven't seen Elaine in a few months. I wanted to hear about it. But how?
Well, I appreciate that. I remember that we had.
Yeah, I'll invoice you later for it. But the travel, how did you navigate playing, and like kind of your overall, like your performance mental health and your general mental health with that insane travel schedule that you guys were on?
Yeah, it was hard because like there was times where like we would just be in China and it was fine, and like teams were coming to us, and like we had the advantage because like we weren't jet lagged. But then like there was times where we would like fly to North America and you're playing 2 nights later. And I remember like being in warm up and like not being able to track anything. Like my eyes, like you're just exhausted, and like your eyes aren't, like you're not processing anything. So at that point you're kind of just like, well, I'm just gonna hopefully like I get hit. I'm gonna, hopefully the puck hits me. I'm gonna do my best. But it kind of just like, in a way, it kind of like took the edge off a bit, which is nice. And you kind of just relax and you're like, well, it is what it is. Like I'm just gonna have to try and make some saves here. It's not gonna be perfect, but like that was kind of my mindset, because the travel was definitely like, it's like a 12-hour time change. So every time you went, it was just, you got so messed up every time you went back and forth.
Were you flying commercial, or did they have a private for you guys?
No, we were first class, so I can't complain too much. We had like beds, like, or the pods. The one flight we took, I remember we were coming back, so we were in China. We were trying to get to North America, and they hadn't booked the flights, and we were leaving in 2 days. So half the team had to fly to, I think, Japan and then home, and we flew to Qatar, and then so like the team split. Well, we were on this like double decker, like massive plane into Qatar, and it was nuts. We were in like I think there was even a level up from us. Like we had pods, but I think there was like another level that was like legit beds. But there was like lounges, like couches. You didn't even feel like you're on the airplane. So that part was good. But nonetheless, the time change still really messed you up.
The budgeting on that, I mean, just obviously it's a whole complicated process, and ultimately that was the only season Bonky existed, right? Like it was the one and done, right? So,
yeah,
I mean,
and we had some very gracious owners, that's for sure. That money was not there. I don't think there was a budget.
And after all that, you didn't try to get Jamie's Uber bill covered, eh? It's telling, really.
Well, honestly, in my defense, I remember this. Like I remember Starbucks, but I don't remember him telling me that it was that expensive to get there, because I would have felt really bad, and I probably would have.
I'm pretty sure I didn't.
You know,
I'm pretty sure I didn't tell you because I knew you were gonna feel bad. Also, I remember that you guys had just got in and like skated, and it was like pretty late. I remember you were like basically falling asleep at the table.
yeah, it was mess. It was messed up.
But
Because you're like, it's a 12-hour flip.
I know. Does Vanky or any of the women's team in China exist, even in the Russian league now?
Yes, Kunlun or Kunlun, I don't know if the right pronunciation is wrong. They do exist still. So after that first year, they went down to one team, and then it moved to, well, it played in the CWHL again the next season, and then the CWHL folded. So then they went to Russia.
Oh, okay. And then your goalie partners that year were both Chinese nationals.
Yes.
I'm not depending on the language barrier and stuff, but did you ever talk about what like growing up in China and trying to navigate that career was like for them, or was that something that you guys just too much of a language barrier?
So my goalie partner didn't speak very good English. There was some players on the team that spoke better English. So we would kind of chat with them, but it was weird. Like from what I recall, like they wouldn't even like go to school. Like they just did hockey. Like that's what they did, which is like super cool. That they were able to do that. But like, yeah, a lot of them had like they didn't. It was just different than like here, where it's like, oh, you go to school and you play like university or whatever. They didn't really do that. So we were like a lot of the girls were like younger. Like we were developing them. Like that was like I think some of them should have been in university at that time, but like they were just with us. So, yeah, it was definitely an experience. That's for sure.
Yeah, and that's a little peek into, I guess, like state-sponsored sporting, which is like, I mean, probably between Russia and China, that's probably some of the only countries that do that, even that I'm not familiar enough with the Russian system to make any actual comments. But I'm not going to get a chance to hear this. This is going to keep rolling, and Jamie's going to completely take over. But I'm going to lead in with a question that I'll listen to when I get to run this back. But let's hear about this season, because we have never had a champion of anything on. I am a champion of reminding Jamie to send me things, and Jamie is a champion of telling me anything. But otherwise,
I'm a champion of just reading your texts and interpreting them how I want to, not as you intended.
Yeah, Jamie hasn't once actually done what he said we were going to do. Anyways, but Elaine, if you could, for people listening, and to Jamie, and then for me, I will be listening to this back. Give us a run through this season, because this is a pretty cool story, and I can't wait to hear it. So let's go.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this year